Powerful hack for a powerful day. So today let's discuss the lack of assistance from the US. Here on one hand, it seems like they're turning away, but on the other hand, they're passing laws about assistance. In short, we'll figure it out today. It's not a simple matter. Here, together with Juan, the Pope of Resilience, we're continuing our report on all these complicated things. And before we start, let's see what's happening in Ukraine. Right there. Right in dear Ukraine, as Shevchenko used to say. In dear Ukraine, on those very fields praised by more than one writer and poet, people continue to be mistreated. So, manhunters came to some village with just 3 houses and started grabbing men right on the dirt road. And so that the women wouldn't interfere, they got their share too. There's a lot going on here, a whole minute's worth. Unfortunately, according to YouTube's rules, I can't show this video in full, but what I can do is, on my Telegram channel, just point your phone or tablet cameras right at this QR code and you'll get there. Or, if you're watching me from a mobile device, there's a direct link to the Telegram channel right here in the video description. Just tap it and you'll get there right away. But I can show you exactly what games kids are playing in Ukrainian sandboxes now.
The Times influence children's games. Hi, who are you? Oh, what are you? It's an Atsk. Atsk. Well, have you caught a lot of people yet?
Well, in a week. In a week, that's including my days off. But just in a week, well, about 10 or 15 people.
10 or 15 people? Is it true you get paid per person?
No.
Not true, so you're just doing it for the cause then, Lukash? Understood. Alright, take care of yourself, my friend.
So that's how it is. Balaclava. In winter, they said the poor little guys at the draft office and in the military had their ears and noses freezing. That's why they wear balaclavas. Honestly, I don't know what could be freezing on them when it's plus 40 degrees, but it's clearly not what they think with. So the kid has games like this. I think this isn't the first and won't be the last. What else? And there's also the magnificent Kuleba, who says all sorts of things. Kuleba, he's a former fighter from Cherenkov at Lopata. The Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs is making various statements, but for some reason doesn't have 3 children, nor any developmental disorders. But for some reason he is not subject to mobilization, not being, well, in general it's all very strange.
In Poland, this is only the start. The peak hasn't come yet.
Putin recently picked up on all these stories.
This is about Poland. It's about the fact that attitudes toward Ukrainians in Poland are getting worse, and there are quite a few videos about Ukrainians being beaten, persecuted, or insulted there. And for some reason, Kuleba and his associates decided to speak out in the middle of an open field to share their valuable opinion on the issue.
He said if Ukraine falls, Poland and Hungary would get their historical lands, but Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has already said they don't want anything from us. When you spoke with them, did you feel they were sincere, wanted nothing from Ukraine, and accepted that Ukraine is Ukraine, or do they still have imperial ambitions?
No, I don't think that Poland is looking for any territorial conquests, any conquests in Ukraine. Orban would like to, but I would even be afraid to say it out loud.
Why isn't Kuleba speaking out again? Usually Kuleba acts as the interviewer, and I am the interviewee on behalf of my wife, that is, Kuleba. A woman interviews Kuleba, the man, and then apparently they switch, interestingly. Overall, all of this is extremely impressive. Well, now let's move on to the USA. What's going on in the USA? The USA suddenly fired the general who is responsible for aid to Ukraine. That's how it happens. The US Department of War, you can sense the peacekeeping nature of this department, has removed the commander of the US 5th Army Corps, Charles Constanza, from his position. Constanza was removed 2 months before the official end of his term, and now suddenly aid to Ukraine is blocked because there is no new person in charge of all this. His dismissal happened against the backdrop of more than 24 others being fired or suspended from their duties. High-ranking officers without any explanation. The general's dismissal may not have a political background, but it does fall under his remit of leading the ground forces and coordinating operations in Europe. On top of that, this unit coordinates American assistance to Ukraine. So for now, it seems Ukraine has been left without American assistance, and on top of that, the US has also prohibited carrying out certain operations. It says here that Ukraine has made a deal with the US, but we both know the value of such deals. What kind of deals are these and how are they carried out? We're told that Ukraine has agreed not to attack certain non-Russian oil tankers and infrastructure that is critical for exporting Kazakh oil. Ukraine has pledged to refrain from targeting those vessels that are heading to the terminal in Novorossiysk. As long as these ships are not carrying Russian cargo, how one can determine whether a ship is carrying Russian cargo or not, I don't know. Maybe there are telepaths working now who are able to read the minds of the passengers and crew of these ships and figure out what's really there. Maybe they're transporting some underwear from Russia to Novorossiysk, or rather from Kazakhstan to Novorossiysk, or something else. Overall, this situation is strange and complicated. Ukraine has set up contact points that allow ships and commercial shippers to transmit information and ensure safe passage, an American official said. Why Ukrainian officials haven't made the same statement is absolutely impossible to understand. Kyiv remains in close contact with American companies and the Trump administration on issues related to the safety and security of commercial shipping. But suddenly Ukraine began to shell ships carrying this very oil, and Kazakhstan was extremely dissatisfied. And Kazakhstan is supposed to be a friendly country to Ukraine, but here, you know, it's like hurt your own side to scare the other side. That's why the Americans decided to step in and temporarily keep this confrontation outside of Ukraine's current actions. But now there's an active discussion, not in the US Senate, but in the House of Representatives, I think, about that Graham law on sanctions from hell against Russia. And it's been approved by the US. Or maybe it's still in the Senate. And this document calls for a real sharp tightening of restrictions against both countries, both Russia and Iran. And the bill has already been sent to the House of Representatives. The lower house of Congress is currently on recess, so the vote there won't happen until lawmakers return. But that's sometime in September. Interestingly, in Ukraine, deputies are on vacation as if there's nothing to do, while the same NARID managers have been in power for 7 years straight. Wonderful, wonderful. Zelensky has now reacted to the US sanctions against Russia and Iran, which don't even exist yet and are only being discussed. But Zelensky has already reacted, and he stated that everything is wonderful. He is very grateful to the US Senate and everyone who supports Ukraine. The adoption of Lindsey Graham's bill on sanctions against Russia and Iran certainly helps increase pressure on the aggressor to end this insane Russian war against our independence and our people. And Zelensky directly called economic pressure the most effective tool for bringing negotiations closer. And of course, he continues to keep quoting this character. This is the current foreign minister with a portable armored vehicle on his head. This saying is called Pisrus Ranks. Whatever that means, the original pronunciation is preserved. The foreign minister of Ukraine is extremely fluent in all languages except English, Ukrainian, and Russian. In short, when he speaks and tries to say something, even in Ukrainian it sounds strange. But he's a wonderful person, no doubt about it. Then, on the one hand again, it seems like sanctions seem to be getting passed, although their fate is still unknown until September. On the other hand, Washington's promises are on hold, and Moscow has intensified its strikes. That's what Atlantic reports. They tell us that optimism around Ukraine, which had been growing since the beginning of the year, vanished in just a few days. At the meeting, Trump did not agree to transfer additional Patriot systems. Apparently, he said, you already have plenty of those so-called Patriots over there. Various types, Pritulas, Chmuts, Tolstolobiks, and all sorts of others. No matter where you spit, you'll hit a Patriot, so you don't need Patriot missiles, especially since flamingos are flying around. They're already launching new missiles over there. I mean, they're not really launching missiles, they're launching budgets. And it turns out it works out perfectly. Oh, and besides that, Trump backed off on the promise to let Ukrainian companies produce the systems themselves. Ukraine won't get any license, and Ukraine is left without a defense minister and without an ambassador in Washington. The ambassador, or rather the female ambassador Olha Stefanishina, I think, is being accused of corruption. And suddenly she was removed from her position. She said she left on her own, but no one told me anything. And her corruption case is only for a few million hryvnias, only because for these people billions mean nothing. Here it's just a few millions. Maybe they handed her over to those people at Nabu and Sapo to show that this is the kind of fight against corruption happening in Ukraine. that even the ambassador herself was taken under scrutiny, but in reality, no one knows anything yet. They've already set a ransom for her there, more precisely a bail of 6 million hryvnias. And I have a feeling that in a few days, some brand new company, fresh as a daisy, with a charter capital of about 1,010 hryvnias will appear. That's about $200. It will buy this permit for Stefanishina's release. This has happened more than once before, with Yermak and with a bunch of other powerful leaders too. That's why one hand washes the other. And here I think there's no doubt about it. Juan and I have no doubt that's how it will be. As for other news, after closed-door talks with Zelensky in Turkey, Trump promised to meet Ukraine's need for air defense. And he described the atmosphere of the conversation to journalists like this. There was a lot of love and a lot of unity in that room. Honestly, I can't say what kind of love and unity there could be in a closed room with just two people. Share your version of events in the comments. How the souls of those present were uniting and separating. At this very meeting of the so-called lovers, apparently, Zelensky asked the United Trump to use his personal influence on Elon Musk, whose company SpaceX manages the Starlink system. The satellite system. Kyiv needs access to it in order to target Russian missile batteries. They strike the capital and other cities. But Trump said, well, maybe, probably, most likely, we'll see. At the moment, there is no positive decision. According to officials, Musk continues to argue with Fedorov about the risk of further escalation of the war, even though Fedorov is no longer the Minister of Defense, but, well, a hero of the cardboard Maidan. Now, people with painted cardboard signs are speaking on the Maidan, and this is presented as democracy. Zelensky asked something like, can you imagine, for example, people in Russia coming out and starting to protest? Protest against what? It's absolutely impossible to understand. But today, reports emerged that one of the activists, one of the organizers of this so-called cardboard Maidan, who ran a Telegram channel with organizational matters, was taken by the authorities and sent to the armed forces of Ukraine. That's the kind of democracy they have. So, on one hand, here the president, the actual president, is talking about how democratic everything is. But on the other hand, well, it's not just one activist who has been taken by the authorities, there are several of them. Of course, none of the more or less well-known people who took part there were detained. No one cared about them since it could cause a situation authorities want to avoid. But regular people, they'll detain them instantly. As for the organizers of Maidan, come on, go fight over there. So there's nothing fun about this, of course. Next, it turns out that Russia has supposedly planned an attack on NATO countries, this very NATO which is basically slowly falling apart. Apparently countries still need to be conquered. Here, the Wall Street Journal claims that Putin will decide to test NATO's strength with a limited strike on a NATO country, without waiting for the war against Ukraine to end. Until recently, we're told, Washington assumed that Putin wouldn't touch NATO while fighting in Ukraine, but the assessment changed at the beginning of this year. The reason? Putin is under increasing pressure on the front lines. Same old story. It's never happened before and here it is again. According to the journalist from this media outlet, Putin, who is being pressed at the front, is demanding victory. And Ukrainian drones are causing increasing damage to the Russian army and the oil industry. Meanwhile, Russian troops are advancing more slowly and with heavy losses. That's why we're told Putin is most likely going to attack one of these NATO countries. Well, so what? And why? Well, to show Russian superiority. Honestly, I don't understand why. I mean, that's been fading for a long time now. One time Putin is attacking Poland, then Estonia, then some other Baltic states, but he's been attacking for 5 years in a row now, I think. Now, regarding Ukraine, Ukraine is indeed carrying out a very extensive campaign of strikes across all of Russia. And now, both the Syzran and Ilsky oil refineries are under attack. I even have videos of the whole process, so let me show you here. It's burning very intensely. You have to keep in mind that this is almost at the horizon, so you can't put out the flames with just 1 or 2 fire trucks. This is something extremely large scale. As for the scale, let's talk in more detail about what's being reported here. On the night of August 8th, Defense Forces strike drones attacked 2 Russian oil refineries at once. Or simply, refineries. These are the Syzran refinery in the Samara region and the Ilsky refinery in the Krasnodar region. Fires broke out at the facilities. The first report came around 3 a.m., and then it all started to spread. The facilities are located about 800 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. And this isn't the first strike on these refineries. They're being gradually destroyed. On top of that, there are still ongoing strikes on Wildberries as well. And now the bankruptcy of Wildberries itself is probably not far off, because, well, if the warehouses with their products are being destroyed, plus they're already introducing some kinds of payouts there, it seems. And this insurance is called Protection Against Drone Strikes. They pay out a maximum of 50,000 rubles as far as I've heard, but honestly, there's nothing good about it either. So that's how things are. Now let's take a look at the opinions of powerful leaders together. Let's see what they're planning. It's been a while since they've shared their most objective opinions and their most brilliant minds. In the studio with these powerful leaders is Zelensky.
All right, let's hear from the clowns.
Go ahead, comrade. Yes, and here we have the first ones coming in. We also have Deputy Barna here. He calls Ukrainians a resource. He always films himself in one little car or another. And he pretends he's not working with the military. Only the SBU is in the sidecar with the engine. Well, here we have Barna in the sidecar with the engine.
He's about to announce mobilization, to mobilize from 300 to 500,000.
Barna puts on a serious face. He stares sternly into the camera to look like a real lawmaker. Phew.
Thank you, let's fix it.
Well, I am confident that nothing like that will happen, because today, Ukraine's mobilization potential today is substantial. I think they are high enough to...
Mobilization resource. But here we also have a person who has been doing nothing for 7 years. He gets a salary, and he calls his voters a mobilization resource. What fine lawmakers we have. Yes, that's how they talk about their homeland. Talking about their own citizens, their compatriots, mobilization resource. There used to be people, now it's just a mobilization resource.
Україну на всіх фронтах. Головнокомандувач Драпатий, він має дуже багато характерних рис, які в минулому проявляли його.
A Freudian slip, they swear so often. You can see that his mind is full of swearing and it slipped out regardless of Barna's own wishes. Well, how could that happen? Let's hear this wonderful moment about you again.
Характерних рис, які в минулому проявляли
A born orator.
його особистісний героїзм, а сьогодні йому таких самих треба хлопців і дівчат об'єднати. Буде, очевидно, і наша...
About proявliato, yes. Well done, well done. And then there's General Krivonis, who continues to call Ukrainian citizens who don't want to die draft dodgers. In his previous video, he was filmed in front of a fireplace in his own house, so you can judge the difference between the ex-general's wealth and that of ordinary Ukrainians. He's now covered the fireplace with the Ukrainian flag and is again talking about draft dodgers, even though he's one himself, not going to the army. Supposedly a general, but Zelensky offended him, so he sits at home and doesn't go anywhere. He says, I would fight, but ugh. And he sits in front of the fireplace, probably warming himself in the summer. But all the other draft dodgers except for himself, it's like there's this former Minister of Transport, Omilyan. That's the name of this character. He was setting up the Hyperloop with Elon Musk, but he only managed to set up financial flows to certain places. In the end, he was taking pictures there on Friend, with his leg bandaged. He was telling everyone that his bone was broken, and then he ran away to the United Kingdom, when a criminal case was opened against him, precisely for draft dodging. And now he goes around telling everyone that he's not a draft dodger, but everyone else is a draft dodger. These guys are just, well, that's how they are. Their thought process just doesn't add up. They have two parallel streams of thought. In that between the ears ganglion, the first one. I'm not a draft dodger, but everyone else is called one. Why is it different for them? It doesn't make sense, but they'd be better off talking about something else. I don't understand,
They are not being held accountable for candidacy or responsibility. Just because we changed the name, two leaders, the Ministry of Defense and the armed forces within the Ukrainian community, won't spark responsibility or shift public attitude about defending the country. The number of Ukrainians willing to defend will stay the same.
And he talks about draft dodgers. I read the story of a Russian general. From the Russian Empire era. He fell out of favor with the emperor. I don't remember which one, sorry about that. I'm not that much of a history expert. And he went to serve as a regular junior officer, I think. Or maybe even as a soldier. Because he said, well, sorry, I can't just sit at home. But here we are, sitting and waiting for something to happen. Eating good food. We have a marble fireplace, and we say that everyone else is a draft dodger. Well, that's how it is, apparently. And with this kind of mentality, of course, there will be victory. When you call all civilians draft dodgers, talking about how the military will come and deal with the civilians. There have already been more than 1 or 2 threats like that, talking about how they're all real Cossack kings. And God forbid a civilian sits at the same table to eat with them. Well, you get the idea. I don't think anything good will happen again.
But Kalinats don't care about last names. They only care about themselves and hide behind their mothers. Last names.
Well, or near the fireplaces. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's how it is. So that's that. On this beautiful Saturday, we're sending you our regards. With Juan, whose sombrero keeps getting smaller and smaller, and we wish you a good day. Bye, everyone.
Look, it's just simple math. If Russia drafts another 500,000 people, the question for the authorities will be how they will mobilize the same number of people who can stand up to that amount, to which we will need to respond with sizable forces, having strong reserves that must react. This is a challenge for the whole country, and we have to be fully ready for this, make some decisions and address people, explain things, although it is already necessary to explain that such challenges exist. And we already need to have a plan for what to do about this.